called your tail. It's the very end of your yarn. The end that is connected to the yarn ball is considered your working yarn. In order to make your slip knot, you're going to have the tail draped over your left pointer finger, the working yarn draped over your pinky of your left hand, and then you're going to cross the working yarn over the tail. Then, with the hand that you have through the loop, you are going to reach over top the working yarn and grab the tail. Here's the tail. You're going to want to hold the tail as you're pulling the loop through. So you insert your hook into this loop, and you should be able to tighten your slip knot by pulling on the tail. If you can tighten it by pulling on this working yarn, you've done it the opposite way. So go ahead and hold your yarn however you feel comfortable. Some people hold it like this, some people wrap around their finger. I hold it between my fingers just like this. And then some people take their hook, they hold it like a pencil. There's the knife hold, but I hold onto the grip here and I have it resting in between all these fingers here. Whatever feels most comfortable for you, that is how you should crochet. This is your hook in the slip stitch. So to create a chain, you're going to yarn over the hook. You do not want to put the hook behind the yarn. This is not yarning over. This is yarning over your hook. And you pull up a loop. Again, you should be able to slide your hook easily through these loops. They should not be very tight at all. So now to create another chain, you will do the same thing. Yarn over and pull up a loop. This loop around your hook is not a chain. This is a chain and this is a chain, but this is not a chain. So in order to count back to the second chain from the hook as stated in the pattern, you will count this as the first chain and this is the second chain. To work into this chain, you are going to go in the very middle of the stitch. There's one strand of yarn over this hook. Go into the middle of the stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. This is the beginning of a single crochet stitch. You should have 2 loops on your hook. You will then yarn over and pull through both loops. This creates one single crochet. This is what the top of the stitch looks like. It creates a V. So this is how you can later count your stitches. This is one stitch. I'll show you what 2 stitches look like. You'll insert your hook into this very same chain, yarn over, pull up a loop. 2 loops on your hook, you'll yarn over and pull through both of those loops. So now you can see we have 2 V's. This is your first stitch, this is your second stitch. Let's do a third. Into this same chain space, insert your hook, you'll yarn over, you'll pull that loop up. With 2 loops on your hook, you'll yarn over again and pull through both loops. So you have 1, 2, 3 stitches. We're going to do this for a total of 8 stitches. So here's 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. If your chain loosened up and you now have this big gap, that's normal. The reason I said you have to pull the slip knot tight with the tail is because now we're going to tighten this circle. So go ahead and loosely grab this knot here. This is your slip knot. You're going to pull. Let me take my hook out so you can see. You're going to grab this little knot. This is the slip knot, and pull tight to close up that circle. You want to pull as tight as you can, but you don't want to pull so tight that you're going to break the yarn. Just pull tight enough to go ahead and close that circle up. Okay, so now we're going to do a slip stitch. How to do a slip stitch: you find the very first stitch from the row, and you're going to insert your hook into the top. Remember I showed you the V? That's the top of the stitch. So you insert your hook underneath both strands of yarn. This is what the back looks like. Here's what the front looks like. I'm going to show you where to insert. So you take your hook and you go under the top 2 loops. Once you're through the 2 loops, you're going to yarn over, pull that yarn through. So now you have 2 loops on your hook. You will not yarn over again. You're going to take this same loop here that you've just pulled up, and you're going to pull it through that loop on your hook. That's how you do a slip stitch. So for round 2, we're going to chain 1, and we will be doing a single crochet increase in every stitch around. To do a single crochet increase, all that means is you're going to put 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So we're going to do 2 single crochets here, 2 single crochets here, 2 single crochets here to increase our stitch count. Currently we have 8. We will end this next round with 16 stitches. So insert your hook into this first stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops. That's 1 single crochet. Now into the same stitch, you can kind of see this little hole here. Into the same stitch, you're going to insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. You're going to yarn over and pull through both of those loops. So now you have 2 stitches. In this next stitch, we're going to do the same thing. Do 1 single crochet, same stitch, we'll put another single crochet. So now we have 4 stitches. Do it again. Next stitch right here. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets. Go ahead and continue this same pattern, putting 2 single crochets in each stitch around for a total of 16 single crochets, and I'm going to meet you back at the end. So now you should have 16 stitches. We're at the end of round 2. It is always helpful to count your stitches. So we're going to start here. We're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 stitches. So now at the end of round 2, we're going to do a slip stitch again. So to do that, you're going to insert your hook into the first stitch of the round, yarn over, and pull through, all the way through. So now we're going to do round 3, and you chain 1. We're going to do a single crochet increase in the very first stitch. So again, that's just 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So this next stitch, we're going to do 1 single crochet. In the next stitch, we're going to do a single crochet increase. 2 stitches in the same stitch. And then in this next stitch, we're going to do 1 single crochet. One more time, we're going to do a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And then a regular single crochet into this next stitch. You're going to continue this pattern all the way around for a total of 24 stitches. So go ahead and continue, and I'll meet you back at the very end. So now we're on round 4. I've already slip stitched into the first stitch of round 3. We're going to chain 1. Now we're going to do a single crochet increase into the first stitch. So do 2 single crochets in that first stitch. But now we're going to do 1 single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. And that just means put 1 single crochet in the next stitch and 1 single crochet in the stitch after that. Then we're going to increase again. So do 2 single crochets in the next stitch and 1 single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. Do a single crochet increase in the next stitch and 1 single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. You're going to continue the same pattern around, doing a single crochet increase and then 1 single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches for a total of 32 stitches, and I'll meet you back at the end. Now we're on round 5. So we're going to chain 1, and this is the easiest round of this entire pattern. We're just going to do 1 single crochet in every stitch around. Very simple. Do 1 single crochet in the first stitch, 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and continue this pattern around until you have a total of 32 stitches. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you back at the end of this round. So here's the end of the round. I've done 32 stitches, 1 single crochet in every stitch around. I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch into this first stitch. You're going to notice it start to curve a little bit, and that's okay. That's exactly what we want. We're going to be making a round ball of dirt. So now to begin round 6, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to be doing some decreases. In order to do a decrease, what you're going to do is you're going to take 2 stitches and bring them together as one. So this is the single crochet decrease. You're going to insert your hook into this first stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop just like normal. However, you will not finish this stitch. You're going to insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. So now you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, and this creates 1 stitch. It brings together 2 stitches as one, so now we will be counting this as 1 stitch. Now we're going to do 1 single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, just like normal. 1 and 2. So now we're going to decrease again. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Do not finish. We're going to put our hook into this next stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. With the 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3. So now you have 4 stitches. We're going to do this again. Insert your hook into the next stitch and do a regular single crochet into the next stitch, and now we're going to do a decrease. So insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. With 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3. So we're going to do this round. We're going to do this exact same thing, decrease and 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches, all the way around for a total of 24 stitches. So I'm going to continue this, and I'll meet you back at the end of this round. And now we'll begin round 7. So chain 1, and in these first 2 stitches we're going to do a single crochet decrease. So go ahead and do your decrease, and then we're going to do 1 single crochet between each decrease. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and we're going to decrease into the next stitch. One single crochet in the next stitch, and 1 decrease into the next stitch. You're going to continue this pattern all the way around for a total of 16 stitches. Remember, when you decrease a stitch, it counts as 1 stitch. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you back at the end of this round. So now I've slip stitched into that first stitch of round 7, and we're going to begin round 8. So chain 1. And for this round, we're going to do a single crochet decrease in every stitch around. I went ahead and tucked the original tail inside of the dirt, and I've pulled on it. I went ahead and pulled tight on it just to close this circle up even more. So to do a decrease in every stitch around, it's very simple. You just do a decrease in these first 2 stitches, a decrease in the next 2 stitches, decrease in the next 2 stitches. This will be my 3rd decrease. Decrease in the next 2 stitches. This is 4. Decrease in the next 2 stitches. This is 5. Decrease in the next 2 stitches. This is 6. Next 2 stitches, 7. And the last 2 stitches, I keep that tail tucked in, the last 2 stitches here, which makes 8 stitches total. So now you're going to slip stitch into the very first stitch of the round. And now I'm going to do 1 single crochet in every stitch around. So I'm going to chain 1. This is going to be round 9. So just do a 1 single crochet in every stitch around, just like normal. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And now you're going to slip stitch again, but you are not going to chain 1. So slip stitch. Now you're going to take about a foot long piece of yarn as your tail. Again, you did not chain one here, you only slip stitched. And you're going to cut it. And you're going to take your hook still inserted and you're going to pull up on that loop until that yarn, you can just use your hand after you get the loop big enough, but you're going to pull that yarn all the way through and you're going to give it just a small little tug. You don't want to like have too tight of a knot here, just a small little tug. So now you're going to take your stuffing and stuff your dirt in this small little hole. Just go ahead and use your thumb to push it in there. You don't want to put too much stuffing in here because you don't want it busting out of the stitches. You just want enough to where it's going to hold its shape in the pot and be firm. But I can still squish this in my hand. It's not very tight. So just make sure that you create this little pancake type shape. And you have your tail. And now we're going to close it up. So with your yarn needle, go ahead and thread your yarn into the needle. I like to take the yarn over the needle and just pinch it and slide the needle out. And then I have this small little end that I can just push through the needle, easily thread it. So now what you're going to do is here's the knot. Here's the first stitch. I showed you the very top of the stitch, which is these two V's here. You're not going to be working into the full stitch. You will only be working into this very front loop. So let's eliminate this back loop here. You're going to be coming up through the middle of the stitch, only this front loop, and pull the yarn through. You don't want to pull it too tight. Now you're going to come back and go up through the next stitch. Again, only working through the front loop. You want to be careful that you don't grab both loops, only this front loop. Do that with the next stitch, and we're going to do that in every single stitch around. You don't want to pull very tight. You just want to pull tight enough to where you don't have excess yarn. So now that I'm back at the beginning, I like to go ahead and go back through this first area. It doesn't matter if you go through both loops or not. I like to go back through just to make sure that I have a full circle. And at this point, you're going to pull tight and it closes that circle up. Just like that. Very tight little circle. This is what's going to be the bottom of your dirt because you can see that it has these openings here. You're going to insert it in the pot just like this. This is going to be the top. This will be where you sew your cactus into. So now we're going to sew in the tail. We're going to hide it in our work. So we're going to take it and just push your needle through a few stitches. And now we're going to go back through. In order to do that, if we went back through the same way, you're just going to pull your yarn out. So you're going to want to skip this piece of yarn over here or the stitch, and you're going to go into this next stitch and go ahead and just weave it right on back through these same stitches. You don't want to be pulling too tight here because you don't want to scrunch your work. You're only sewing it in, so just tight enough to where the yarn doesn't show, but don't pull it tight. So now again, here's where the yarn is coming out. We're going to want to skip this stitch here and come into this next stitch and work our way back around. I go back and forth 3 times. I'm going to go ahead and do it a 4th time just to make sure it's nice and secured. And here's where you snip your yarn. You don't want to snip it too close. Just leave about 1/4 of an inch. Snip it. And then you can just pull on it a little bit and it hides your tail. Your tail works its way into the fabric. So now that you have your dirt, we're going to go ahead and start with your cactus, and then I'll show you how to sew them together and put them in the pot. Now we're going to begin your cactus. I'm going to be using this purple yarn as my stitch marker, but feel free to use any yarn that you have, any color other than green. You don't want to use green because it can get confusing, or your own stitch marker. So for this, we're going to make the slip stitch in exactly the same way as the dirt. This is the tail, this is the working yarn. Cross over the tail, grab the tail and pull up through so we can adjust this loop by the tail. Insert your hook and pull tight. You want your hook to be able to glide in and out of the slip stitch. So we're going to chain 2. We're going to work this just like the dirt, doing 8 single crochets in the second chain from the hook, which is right here. So go ahead and do 8 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we're going to do this a little bit differently than the dirt. We are not going to slip stitch and chain 1 between each round. So go ahead and pull your little circle tight. And we are going to do 2 single crochets or a single crochet increase in this first stitch. Again, we are not slip stitching and chaining 1. We are going to go ahead and work into that first stitch. So do it just like normal. This is your first single crochet. This is where you would put your first stitch marker in. And what I do, I have 2 hooks here. I take one of my hooks and I insert, or if you don't have a second hook, you can always use this hook. Just pull this loop up, take your hook out. So take your hook and insert it into that first stitch, just like you're going to work into it. Just insert it into the top. Take your yarn and just pull it through to mark that that's the first stitch of the round. So this is your first stitch of round 2. We're going to do a single crochet in that same stitch. So this is 2 single crochets in the same stitch, or a single crochet increase. And we're going to do 3, 4 single crochet increase in every stitch around. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So we know that this next stitch now is the first stitch of the previous round, but again, we are not going to slip stitch into it. We're going to pull out our stitch marker. We're going to do a single crochet increase. So here's 1. That's the first stitch. So we're going to go ahead and put our stitch marker here. 1, 2 in the same stitch. And we're going to do 1 single crochet in between every increase. So we did our single crochet increase. We did our 1 single crochet after that. We're going to do a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And then 1 single crochet into the next stitch. And we're going to continue this pattern for 24 stitches around. And I'll meet you back at the end of this round. So we just completed round 3. We're going to continue on to round 4. And round 4 is just 1 single crochet in every stitch around. So we are done increasing. So we're going to do this first single crochet, which is your first stitch. So we're going to go ahead and insert our stitch marker or piece of yarn. So this is your first stitch, and we're going to do 1 single crochet in every single stitch around. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to continue this all the way around until we have 24 stitches. We're back at our stitch marker. We're going to remove that stitch marker, place our first stitch of round 5, and place our stitch marker back into that first stitch. This is, again, the first stitch of round 5. The reason that we are doing it this way is because it creates a seamless look, whereas in the dirt, you can see that there's a scar here. So there's a definite edge, a definite seam. But here, it's a clean look all the way around. Round 5 is going to be a repeat of round 4. You're going to repeat round 4 until round 18. So each round you're going to do 24 stitches, 24 single crochets in each stitch around. So go ahead and continue that until you hit round 18, and once you finish round 18, we'll meet back. Make sure that you're placing your stitch marker in the first stitch of every round. Make sure that you're counting. Double check your counting. You do not want to be off on this or it won't create the shape that you want. So go ahead and do that and we'll meet back at the end. So now you should have a total of 18 rows. You can count your rows. Starting here, you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So now you're going to slip stitch into the next stitch to finish off this round. So insert your hook, yarn over, and pull all the way through just like you would normally. Now you're going to chain 1. You're going to use this tail to sew the cactus onto the dirt. So go ahead and make sure it's about a foot. Snip your yarn and pull the yarn through that chain 1. Then you're going to pull tight and that creates a knot. Now we're going to stuff our cactus. Again, here, you don't want to put too much stuffing to where the stuffing's busting through the stitches. You just want enough for the cactus to keep its shape. I like to make sure that that original tail is tucked in before I start stuffing so that I don't have to weave it in. Now grab your yarn needle and go ahead and thread it. And now we're going to sew it onto our dirt. We ended with 24 stitches, so it only makes sense to sew it on the round that had 24 stitches. So I like to make sure that this little part, this little knot, stays in the back. And to do that, I find the back of my dirt or the scar, which is right here, and I insert my needle next to this stitch. Again, this is round 3. This is the round with 24 stitches. So I insert my needle here. And then after I have it through that stitch, I'm going to go underneath that first stitch and pull up on my needle. And that secures the first stitch to the dirt. So now, on the third round, I'm going to go underneath that stitch. And I'm going to take my needle, and just to save time, I'm going to do them both at the same time. I'm going to go into the next stitch of the cactus. Again, you want to get that whole stitch and just pull up. I'm going to do this to every single stitch around. So we're going to go in underneath that next stitch, in through that next stitch on the cactus. So continue sewing that all the way around, and I'm going to meet you back at the end. So now your cactus should be looking something like this. We're going to weave in our tail just like we did with the dirt. So we're going to find a set of stitches, preferably in a row, and insert our needle through the stitches. Again, you don't want to pull tight because you don't want to cinch the stitches. All you're doing is hiding your tail in your work. We are going to now skip this stitch here and work here and go back. Okay, most people weave it in 3 times, but I like to do it 4 times just to make sure it's secured. And then again, you're going to snip it 1/4 of an inch out, not very far out, but not too close. And then you can just kind of stretch your fabric and it hides the tail in the cactus. To begin the arm of the cactus, you're going to do a slip knot just like with the dirt and the regular cactus. So take your working yarn and cross over the tail grab the tail and pull up through that loop, insert your hook, and pull tight on the tail. Now we're going to chain two, and we're going to do 8 single crochet in the second chain from the hook. So here's the first single crochet, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now pull tight on the tail to close the gap. To begin round 2, we're going to place our single crochet into the first stitch of the last round. We did not do a slip stitch, and now in this stitch we're going to place our stitch marker so that we know that this is the very first stitch of round 2. And do 1 single crochet in every stitch around for a total of 8 stitches. So we already have 1. Here's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We will be repeating round 2 all the way until round 10. So just continue crocheting in each stitch around until you hit round 10, and I'll meet you back then. Okay, so now we're at the end of round 10. Here's your first stitch with your stitch marker. Your tail is going to be hanging out. You can go ahead and stuff that in, and we're going to stuff this part before we continue. So grab your stuffing. You just want a little bit. Okay, now insert your stuffing. You don't want too much. You don't want it to bulge out of the stitches. Okay, to begin round 11, take out your stitch marker, and we're going to do a slip stitch in the first 2 stitches. So start with a slip stitch, insert your stitch marker into that slip stitch. Okay, and then we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch. And then we're going to do 4 half double crochets, so 1 half double crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. To do a half double crochet, you yarn over your hook, insert the hook into the stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Now you have 3 loops on your hook. You yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So we've done the first half double crochet. Again, you're going to yarn over your hook before you insert it into the stitch. Insert the hook, yarn over again, pull up. With the 3 loops on your hook, you're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So far we have 2 half double crochets. We're going to do our third into the next stitch, and here's the 4th half double crochet. Now in the next 2 stitches we're going to slip stitch. So just insert your hook and pull that yarn through. And this completes round 11. Rounds 12 through 15, we will be doing the exact same thing. I'm going to go ahead and go through round 11 with you. So pull out your stitch marker, and into this slip stitch, we are going to work another slip stitch. You don't want to do your slip stitches too tight, because when you try to work back into them, it can be a little difficult. So make sure that you're making them just a little bit loose. Insert your stitch marker. So this is the first stitch that we've done of round 11. The next stitch is going to be a slip stitch. And then we're going to do 4 half double crochets. Okay, so that's 4 half double crochets. Again, we are currently on round 11. So now we slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. And this completes round 11. Continue this until you finish round 15, and I'll meet you back. So now that you've completed round 15, You're going to take out your stitch marker and do a slip stitch into that first stitch of the round. And now you're going to chain 1. After you chain 1, take a long tail about 12 inches and snip, and then pull that loop all the way through and pull tight to create a knot. Now you're going to stuff the rest of the cactus. So this is what your cactus arm should look like. So now we're going to thread our yarn needle. You're going to sew it on about 4 rows from the bottom. So count up 1, 2, 3, 4. And place the bottom of the arm on that above that 4th row. And start sewing in. And to do that, you just insert your needle in the closest stitch to where this yarn is ending on the arm. Pull it through and then come in through the arm and come out that very same stitch. So now this stitch is closest to here. I'm going to insert my needle into the cactus, and now I'm going to go into this next stitch of the cactus arm. And just continue doing that all the way around until your arm is totally secure. So now that you have your arm secured, you're going to weave in your ends. I'm going to put it through the arm, and I'm going to come out the back so that I land my yarn right next to these stitches in this row. I can easily thread that through. Okay, and now we're going to snip the yarn. And that is how you make the cactus.
Now take your finished cactus